So we're talking because during the week we had a discussion on Tuesday with a couple of guys about fishing chironomids, and that was as a result of seeing a what must have been a massive chironomid hatch with fish rising all over the place and not being able to catch anything. And then Dale said, I fish chironomids on the bottom and I have not had much success, and how do you do it? And the first comment I had was, well, most of the chironomid fishing I've done have not been in lakes where you need to get down 25 to 30 feet. They're in the prairie lakes where they're not that deep. Whereas out here, certainly in the local lakes, from what Dale was saying, he's been trying to fish them down around 25, 30 feet, which is a little more difficult. It's hard to get them down there. And the other issue is when you're going deep with a fly like that, if you leave any tension at all, you're going to miss the strike. So the discussion I had with him is how to avoid that. And one of the first things is that he was saying he fishes mostly with his rods in the rod holders. And I said, well, the first thing you got to do is tip your rod holder down so that the tip of the rod's in the water, because you have that short little piece of line that goes from the rod tip down to the water, and the flexibility in the rod tip. By the time you see the strike, the fish are gone, because they don't bite the hook. They suck it in and then spit it out, and they can do that really fast. So what you need to do is you need to be able to feel or have no slack in your system in order for the hook to set. So I gave him the quick rundown on what I tended to use back in Alberta. And I think it would work here if you used a more robust leader and a little more weight on the bottom. And what it starts with is you get a standard leader with the standard perfection loop on the end. And you put one of these fill rolly indicators. And the reason you use these guys is after you've hooked the fish, in order to reel it close enough, it comes apart like this. And the indicator allows you to reel closer to your rod tip so that you aren't trying to reach with a 12-foot net to try and get out to the fish. So that's why Phil and Brian Chan invented these little strike indicators. And then to keep slack out of the drop between the indicator and where the fly is, you attach a little swivel at the bottom, and all that does is take some of that slack in the vertical drop out so you can sense the strike. Now in Alberta, you get the added advantage. You can put 2 flies on there. Here, of course, you can't. The other advantage of this little swivel at the bottom is that when this indicator pops, this pin tends to run all the way down the line to where the fly is. And if the fly breaks off, then you lose the little plastic thing. So to avoid that, this swivel stops that as well. And that's typically the rig that I would use for fishing lakes and with chironomids. The other nice little thing is to have a pair of forceps or this thing here, which is basically for ice fishing. You just clip it on your line and go down to the bottom and then reel up 1.5 feet. And then that's where you set your strike indicator. So this is if you lose one of these, it's not as drastic as losing a piece of forceps, pair of forceps. Anyway, the other thing is when they're hatching, midges, which chironomid are, the adults are midges or true flies, they tend to hatch in masses. And sometimes they'll come up and there'll be clusters of them, little groups of them. So if you're going to fish chironomids on the surface, you either go with a teeny tiny little fish and hope that, or hook, and hope that the fish picks out yours of the hundreds that are on the surface. Or you do what fish clusters of midges, which is what this pattern is. And as I noted in the missive I sent out, this goes back to the early 1900s, developed by a guy down east again. And it was originally a Renegade, which basically just had a peacock curl body with a brown hackle at the front and at the back. And basically that's a group of midges. And then they developed one for Henry's Lake, which is in Yellowstone. And to make it a little more attractive there, I gather, they used red thread with a butt, because sometimes when these chronoids come up, they have a little orange butt off the tag end. That's the tailing end of their shuck. And then a couple of hackles, and then peacock herl, which I think the way the peacock herl is it looks like a shuck that the insect is trying to get out of. And it captures air, so that when you're fishing this on the surface, it tends to float in the surface film with a little bit of glisten to it, because the peacock captures some air. So that's the fly that I'm going to tie to start with. It's called a Henry's Lake Renegade. All right, so hooks. The first batch I tied on, and and I'm going to tie these in size 10 just so that you can see them. You can get these down to 18s if you really want. Getting that fine of hackle and peacock herl is fun, though. So this is a Hennick 10. That's the heavyweight one, and that's intended to pull out a little further in the film. But the one I'm going to tie is on today, because it's got a slightly longer shank, is a Tiemco 2462, which is a 2x long wet fly hook. So I'm just going to take the barb off. Of course, with the Hennick ones, they're barbless, so that I don't have to do that. But okay. Now I'll put that in the vise fairly solid. I think you guys should be able to see that okay. All right. Now, the two ways of dealing with these, the difference between the regular Renegade and the Henry's Lake is that the Henry's Lake uses red thread, and it uses a white and a brown hackle, whereas the Renegade, the original Renegade, was just peacock herl and brown hackle and regular black thread. And one of the instructions I said, if you want to, you can rib the body with a piece of red floss. And I don't think that helps so much, so I'm going to do it without the red floss today. It's a little trickier to tie. This one is a lot faster, because you don't have to piss around with a piece of red floss tag. But what I do want the red in the hook, in the fly. So I'm going to start a little bit behind the eye, and I will wrap all the way down the hook shank. When I get to the bend, I'll just trim off the tag. And if you're going to rivet, this is where you keep the tag hanging out the back. But I'm not going to do that today. Another thing not to keep track of. And then I'll make nice tight wraps all the way around the bend. Because one of the things we found, I think, that the red tag on a number of flies seems to add a little bit more effectiveness to the pattern. Don't ask me why, but it does. And I'm going to bring it. So I've got a nice little red tag at the back. Now the rear hackle is going to be a brown or a furnace hackle. And this is the neck that I've taken these off of. And I don't need a whole long hackle. So what I want to do is pick ones that have the right, if you bend it over the hook, have about 1.5 gap lengths worth of barbules. Now I've selected some out here that are like that. And so that one's about right, maybe a little long. And I don't need the whole hackle. The way I prep these is I take the black part of the furnace out, because it's a little softer material. And I'll trim that right off. And then on either side of these, I'll just pull the hackle out so that the barbules stick out to the side of it. And I'm going to go in with my scissors and just clip the barbules off on either side, so you get that little fuzzy bit. And the purpose of that is to prevent the hackle from pulling out after you've tied it in and you're trying to wrap it around. So lay that on the near side of the hook. Oh yeah, and with these, you want them to, the hackle to kind of curve to the forward side of the fly. And so I'm going to tie it with the intensely colored part facing away from me. And I'll tie that in and wrap my thread up just to tie the butt of that in good and solid. A couple of quick wraps all the way up to the eye, which I'll unwrap later when I go to tie it down. And grab the hackle by the hackle pliers. And I'm going to make a reasonably fuzzy hackle. Oops, that's, I need to do a little repair job on my Griffin hackle pliers, I think, because it looks like I lost the one of the little bits of red heat shrink tubing that helps hold on to these hackles when you're wrapping. If you haven't had that done before on your hackle pliers, just take a little piece of heat shrink tubing on the jaws and shrink it down. And what that does is that gives a little more grip to the hackle plier. I like these Griffin ones because you can keep that hackle from twisting on you as you go over the hook. And it'll make a nice cupped forward hackle at the back. And I'll get 4 or 5 wraps out of this. Then you saw where I did the quick wraps up the shank. I just have to unspiral those to get to the back. And that way the thread's out of the way when I'm wrapping that hackle. I'll do a couple of wraps there. Pull it back, a couple of wraps in front. Come in with my scissors and trim off the hackle. That's part one. Now the body is peacock curl. And I want a fairly fuzzy body on this. So I've got, you can find various grades of peacock curl. This stuff is not too bad. It's sort of mid-grade in that it's got fuzz on it, but not really long fuzz. If you get into the stem of some of the peacock stems, you'll find you can get some really fuzzy peacock curl. So this stuff's not too bad. And I'll take 2. And what I'll do with them is I will come down to where the fuzz starts to disappear. And I'll cut the butt ends off. Trim off the butt ends. Bring my thread back up to about the 1/3 point. And I'll tie down on top of that and wrap my thread back down the shank to just a little in front of where I've got that hackle tied. Then what I do is I take these, this is where I can get by without doing the red ribbing. I'm going to wrap my hackle around the thread. This does 2 things. It mixes the red color in with the hackle, the peacock color. And at the same time, it strengthens the peacock curl so that when a fish gets his tooth in there, he's not going to break that hackle and have it unwrap on you on the body of the fly. And then I'll start at the back and just wind that up the shank of the fly. And as you do that, you can, I don't know if you can see it in the picture here, but it does give that little red hint all the way up the body of the fly. Partly because I've got the red underneath and also because the thread is wrapped around the peacock curl. So when I get up to about 3 eyelets behind the eye, I will come up here and unwrap the hackle from the thread. And I will quit that. There we go. Now come up and wrap over top. And a couple of wraps in front. Trim it off. And you see I've left a pretty fair distance between the end of the body and the eye, because I want to have a red head on this thing as well. Okay, then the next thing is we need a white hackle. I have this beautiful pelt that I've had for a long time. It's with these saddles, sometimes those genetic birds, they get really long hackles, and some of the really long ones have even barbules for a very long length down the hackle. These ones, they're really short when they get into the choice hackle. So I've had to kind of go through this to find the hackles that will work, that are actually shorter and don't have too long barbules. So I'll measure them and see, okay, that's about the same as the back from this part of the hackle. So I want the bottom section of the hackle for this one. And I'll do the same thing. I'll strip it back a bit, trim it off, cut it square, and then I'll stroke it back a little bit and trim either side of the stem. And the same thing again, I'll have the cup of the hackle facing me when I tie this in so that it goes forward. And then I'll leave it hang. Get my hackle pliers. As you can see, I've only got one piece of heat shrink on that guy now. And I'll come up and wrap around. And I want to get about the same, not only the same hackle length, but the same density of hackle as I wrap this thing. So I want a reasonably robust hackle front and back. When I get to the end, I'll do the same thing, come in my thread a couple of times over, hackle back a couple of times in front, scissors in here and snip the hackle. Make a little tent with my fingers and pull the stray hackle fibers back and wrap right behind the eye. And you'll see I'm a fair ways back, so I want to build a nice little red head in here. And I think the idea behind that is that this is like two midges, one at the back and one at the front facing each other. And it's a midge cluster, not an individual midge. So you're getting a bigger hook with a pair of flies tied on one shank. And I think the theory is that if a fish sees that group of midges, it's a little less work to get two for the price of one. So it might be a little more attractive than having a single midge floating amongst a group of hundreds. Anyway, I did have I have one real memorable day with this particular pattern on Mirror Lake, which Florin is familiar with. It's a lake that was a winter-killed lake many years, and then the two fishing clubs got together along with the municipality to kill the lake out and stock it with fish so that it could have. And then it had special regulations. You couldn't keep anything under 20 centimeters, 20 inches sort of thing. So the idea was to try and make it a trophy fishery. So I remember one day with Rick and I were in my canoe on the lake, and there was a weed beds in the middle of portions of the lake, and Rick and I took turns paddling around the outside of this weed bed and casting into the furrows in the weed bed. And they were on these midges, and it was like fish after fish. You'd cast till you catch one and paddle till the other guy caught one. And we were doing a lot of switching over that day because they were hitting these like crazy. And it has been a pretty productive fly for me if there's a midge hatch going on. So that's it for me, and I will pass it on. Oh, whoops, I will stop the highlight here. Oops, there we go. Remove the spotlight. Okay, there we go. So that's the Henry's Lake Renegade.
Thank you, Dave.
Yeah.
I'm going to follow Dave's pattern up with something much smaller.
Okay.
And so these things are going to be tied on size 14 or 16, depending on the particular hook style. And what I'm doing is I'm staging this up a little bit. So I'm pre-tying the bodies. And because the wire, even with the wire rib, the wire is pretty fine. I give these things a coat of Sally Hansen's and let them dry before I put the hackle on. So this was, as Dave was tying and was talking about two tones in the body and so on, I thought, okay, let me do a two-tone body here. Here's another version of two-tone with slightly different colors, a bit more of a lighter orange tan for the back end and black in the front. Here's one just with the holographic thread, no ribbing on it. And here's a plain black one with ribbing. Now the two hooks I've been playing with here are these. I have some of these from Trout Bum. They're nominally size 16 and they're fairly large. And then to match the size of the hook roughly, I'd be using size 14 in this other style of hook, the Togan's hook. Both of them are relatively fine wire, so they should work well for what is essentially a dry fly. Okay, so let me start by tying a body from beginning to end. And I'm going to do another one of those two-tone ones. So in order to do that, I'm going to use, if you just want one tone, you simply use whatever thread color you want and just use that one. Let me get this. Okay. In this case, I'm going to use black thread and the other material is just going to be tied in separately. If you just do a plain black one, all you need is the black thread. So tie this a little bit in. And then I like to unwind my thread. It gets a little twisted as I tie. And I have one strand of, this is officially, I looked on the label again, it's gold z-lon. Whatever color you have, I think something light color. This is very sparkly stuff that catches the light very nicely. So I think it does a decent imitation of a trailing shuck, and should give a little bit of support to the back end of the fly, so this thing does not sink too far. Kind of, you want to keep it as close as you can to the surface film. Okay, so the challenge with this is that these fibers can get a little bit unruly here. I'm just gonna get this. And if this bundle of fibers shows a tendency to separate, just take a couple of wraps of thread behind the point where you want to stop, and that'll lock everything nicely in place, as you can see here. Okay, you can just tie this off now to get it out of the way. Just kind of body length. You can always trim this a little bit if you know it's a little bit thick at the back end, so I like to sort of trim it a little bit so it's a little more pointy at that end. Now I want this to be ribbed, so I'm going to tie in the wire at this point. So I just use the small size silver wire. In this case, you can use, you can use red, you can use whatever color you think is going to work best. And so tie the wire in. Make sure that it's covered all the way to the point where the tail begins. And then just wind a little forward, make sure you cover it all up. And now for the back end, I'm going to use one strand I found digging through my fly tying stash. I found some Flashaboo that's kind of orangey in color. I like that orange color, and it's supposed to be glow in the dark. I don't think that matters, honestly. I tried to see if it actually does glow in the dark, and it sort of vaguely glows in the dark. It's pretty old stuff, so I don't know if that has anything to do with it or not. Anyway, so like I said, this is like a pale, almost tan orange color, and that's why I like to use it, because I thought that this is a good color. I've seen chironomids that have, look to me at least, looking at them from above, they look like they have a fair amount of orange in them. Okay, so now I'm going to just wrap this in the back, and reasonably close turns here, but it really doesn't matter that much because I'm going to overwrap in order to get a solid color. Just take your time and be very, very careful with these. These barbless hooks are incredibly sharp. The one touch on the hook point, and you cut your thread, you cut your ribbing, you cut whatever material you're using, well, except for wire. Okay, so let's say I'm satisfied with this much. I can always go and cover with black if I want to shorten this. So now I'm going to build the front of the body. So in this case, I'm just going to leave it black. And you can, obviously, you can vary, you can choose whatever color combination you like. Now this is 8/0 thread, so if I want to build any bulk here, it's going to be a little bit of extra wraps. Now a rotary vise is not an ideal thing to use with these curved hooks because it's quite a challenge. Oops. To keep the thread out of the hook point. I'm only going to use the rotary vise for the ribbing, because the wire is not going to get hurt if it touches that hook point. Okay, so just do one nice wrap at the back end, and then see how I did catch the hook point despite my best efforts, and then go forward. A lot of this is going to be covered by the hackle anyway. So now I'm going to Secure the wire in place. 3 wraps should do it. And then just helicopter the wire. Done. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a whip finish or 2 on this. And coat it with Sally Hansen's. So take one of these electronics clips. This is the body of the fly finished. Put it in the clip. A little bit vertical helps so that the Sally Hansen's is not gonna sag badly on this and make an ugly looking body. So you just have to use a tiny little amount, as it is a tiny little hook. So just touch it with a bit of this lacquer on one side and on the other side. This should give a little more strength to the body. It also creates, I think, a little bit of a nice effect in sort of embedding that wire in something that's transparent. And so you get I think you get a few more light effects that should work in your favor by doing this. Okay, so now you have a bunch of prepared hooks. So after you've left them long enough to dry, take one of these prepared hooks and put it back in the vise. Now I want to wrap the hackle, so I'm going to angle this in a way that's going to make it a little bit easier to wrap the hackle, like this. And I'm just going to use the same plain black thread that I used on the previous fly. So attach the thread at the head and go back a little bit to the point where you want to attach the hackle in. And you want smaller hackle. If anything, you want it undersized, I think, on this fly. And do the same thing Dave was showing earlier. So strip a little bit of the, not strip, but pull back a few fibers at what's going to be your tying point. I'm trying to show this on a bit of a black background. And then just take your scissors and trim that little bit there to create this sort of like what looks like, doesn't show very well. It looks like a little comb there that's going to be making the attachment a lot more secure. So tie your hackle in, and now you can, depending what you want to do, is I'm going to turn the vise instead of, because it's a fairly long saddle hackle, so it's going to be much more convenient to do it this way. It also gives me pretty good control. So I'm going to start wrapping. Again, careful there with the hook point, and do very close, tight turns of the hackle. Let's say this should be good enough. And bring the thread back up again and secure the hackle behind with 3 turns, and then stroke those fibers back a little bit. And do a few turns in front. You can cut the hackle at this point, just push the scissors into the hackle and pull it on the hackle at the same time, and that's just gonna cut it very cleanly. And then to whip finishes, I don't like head cement at this point anymore because that tends to muck up the hackle. I'm not good at just doing this very cleanly. So I just prefer to have a couple of whip finishes, and that seems to be usually enough. Something else breaks on the fly before the whip finish at the head gives up. Okay, and then again with the thread, pretty much the same thing. Just tighten the thread and push the scissors into it. And that's the finished product. And the idea here is to have a hackle that's big enough to lift this off the surface, a little bit of a tail here for the shuck to support the back end of the fly, so that you end up with this sort of stick that seems to sit at a 45-degree angle on the surface of the water. At least that's the intention. I haven't really tried these flies. I've tried similar flies for mayfly emergers, and they did work well. I can see Michael Dell here, so he gave me that idea for blue wing olives, basically tying a back end like a pheasant tail and a front end like an adult, like a dun. And so I thought that, you know, similar kind of idea more or less should work for midges as well. So I guess that's where these two-tone things, where you go with a red back. I'm not sure about the shuck, whether, you know, these flies would work better with or without one. So I'm gonna try a few without a trailing shuck, just a simple red butt and a different color front end with a hackle. So yeah, so that's the fly. These are on size 16. I guess you want to look at what's on the water and try to match the sizes. I just picked size 16 as being a kind of an average size of midges that I've seen around, but they could be bigger, they could be smaller.
I like that, Florin.
Yeah.
I think that if you can get the colors right, that would have worked.
Yeah, and that's the issue, I guess. Another thing is maybe for a situation like this, you know, carry binoculars. After all, you are in a boat.
Mm-hmm.
And take a closer look, or carry a big mean telephoto lens and take a few pictures. And those you can examine at your leisure on a large monitor at home, and you can see every possible detail of the fly.
So as I understand it, with these chironomids, it's what we're looking at is different parts of the stage of the insect. Like, they start off as eggs laid in the bottom of the lake, and then they turn into a worm. Basically, they grow as a worm, and different chironomids have different lengths of worm. I know some of the ones in Alberta, the worms are 2.5 to 3 inches long. And when you're fishing with a San Juan worm, that's what you're fishing with, is you're fishing a chironomid larva. And then they do what they call pupate. They go into a shell to convert from the worm to a nymphal version. And the ones that we often fish at the bottom are the nymphal version. And it looks like any other nymph. It's got the gills at the back and a little bit of legs and a little bit of hump where the thorax is, in order to develop the wing case. And then when they decide it's time to hatch, they kind of fill their shell, their shuck, with a little bit of air. And then that causes them to be buoyant. And that they stage in that foot to foot and a half above the bottom when they're doing that. And a lot of the time when we're fishing chironomids, that's what we're doing. We're catching that pupal version before it becomes an adult. And then having filled their shuck with air, they float to the top. And when they hit the surface, they have to crawl out of that. So there's that pupal shuck that's hanging down below them, and then the insect as it's coming out, and then the yet to dry wings at the top. And as soon as they're out, it doesn't take them long to get those wings spread, and off they go. They kind of pop out. And then that's the adult midge. And from what I understand, every one of those stages, the insect decreases in size by about half. So if you're seeing midges flying around in the air that are like 1/8 of an inch long, the emerger is going to be 1/4, the pupil is going to be half, and the adult worm is going to be 1 inch or more. So if you're seeing these little midges flying around and you're going to fish on the bottom, you better multiply the length of the midge to the pupil stage by about 4. So and the trailing shuck, that little yellow or orangish part, that's what's kind of left behind as the empty shuck underneath the insect as it's trying to hatch. And I think that's one of the things that I remember Roman Sherabin had a pattern called the RS quad that had that trailing shuck on it, and he tied them very similar to that. Maybe I should research that pattern and tie that one of these days, because that was a pretty effective fly. And he used to fish those not necessarily in lakes. He used to fish those in the Crow's Nest stream and areas down in the southwest part of Alberta. And they're a pretty effective pattern.
It was pretty interesting because literally you didn't see any of them. They must have, emerged and almost immediately taken off.
Yeah, it's very quick from once
you didn't see them sitting on the water at all.
No, once the wings pop up, they're pretty much out. Yeah. So once you're catching them on the surface, sometimes you're getting the ones that are cripples that are kind of caught in the surface film, and they're not yet ready to come out, or they can't get out of their shuck.
Yeah, the RS squad is more of a mayfly pattern.
Yeah, it is.
It's quite a it's quite an intricate tie. I think if you want to tie that for a midge, it's very technically challenging in small sizes, and frankly a little overkill. It's a beautiful fly, size 10 and 12. It's a magnificent
10 and 12, and it's a very productive fly as well.
But for you guys to try, to work this problem out, here's another thing you may want to try. This is on a size 18 hook, I believe. So this is really small. Just a zebra midge. It's very easy to tie. Black thread for a body, silver wire for a rib, tungsten bead if you want to fish this in a stream. It'll get you down. And then a hotspot of some fluorescent red color behind the bead. And that somehow seems to be working very well. Another way I would try it in a situation like you guys ran into last week is to take a fly like this, put a bobber on, and suspend this pretty close to the surface under that bobber, and keep your line tight. Let the wind drift things around, give it the occasional twitch maybe, and see what happens. Because I have caught, like I said, I don't like this 30-foot.
No.
For me, fly fishing is 6 to 8 feet depth maximum kind of thing. And then another fly that's, for this one is a specifically designed pupa pattern.
Yeah.
It's known as a bow tie buzzer, and you can't really see this because this fluff is supposed to be like divided in two, but it sort of merges into one. This is this unwaxed dental floss that once you, it's easy to work with because you have a long strand and you can tie it on, and then you can tie it short for gills here. And again, the idea for fishing something like this is suspended as close to the surface film as you can. And they're a little bit more challenging to tie, but you can also tie these in fairly small sizes. So here are some things to try. I have some tied with glass beads as well. I don't like those too much because I seem to be, my back cast is not always very good, and when they hit the rocks, the glass beads shatter. So
it's a good way to learn to cast properly, Florin.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, I suppose I kind of plateaued long time ago in terms of casting ability. It's just kind of, as soon as I started to catch fish, I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm casting well enough. It's an incentive problem.
Well, as Tony will attest, when you're trying to cast long distances to great big fish in the tropics, if you don't have a good casting stroke, you're really going to suffer.
Yeah, you can't double haul properly as well.
I'm sure about that, but my bigger problem with fishing in the tropics is that I wouldn't do it because of the heat, because of the tropics part of it. So I guess I'm not likely to ever face that particular problem.
Well, you don't. I don't know. It's something you get addicted to. Trust me, when you start catching fish like that, it's completely addictive.
Yeah.
Especially when you start using those massive flies for GTs, and that it sounds like a bird flying past your ear as the fly comes along.
And the places you do that in are so beautiful, you let go in there anyway.
You just, yeah, exactly. Yep. Well, gents, thanks very much.
Thanks, Tony.
I got to run. I got to go
Tony?
shop for booze. So,
thanks, guys. You're welcome. So what are you stocking booze out for, Tony?
I've got an Argentinian dinner coming up that I'm preparing with friends. So I have to go and get some Kahlua for the dessert and some Argentinian Malbecs.
Yep.
So we will see you on Tuesday.
Great.
Cheers, guys.
And I'll see you next Saturday. I guess this is going to continue on the same schedule, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
by the sound
probably.
of it. Sorry?
Yeah, probably it's the early December.
Yeah. Okay, guys.
Okay.
All righty. Take care, guys.
Good.
Thank you, Florin and Dave. Enjoyed it.
Yeah.
See you
Good to
later.
see you again, Brian.
Good to see you,
Thank you.
Michael.
Thank you.
Good to see you, Michael, as well. Thanks for joining.
Sorry, I was late coming to the meeting.
Not-
I was
not
just
bad.
catching up on my email this morning. I said, "Oh, there's a meeting now."
Yeah.
Yeah, well, there's always next week, I guess. Well,
Yep. Mhm.
you've heard it. It sounds like we're gonna continue with this. So
Yeah, we may until I think John is the guy that generally, when he's back from Mexico or wherever the hell he is right now, he may hold an in-person one. But right now, nobody really is prepared to do an in-person right yet.
okay. So he's the one normally hosting it at home.
Yeah, we have done them at the club. Maybe we'll test the interest one of these days and do one at the Esquimalt Anglers on a Saturday morning.
Okay. Well, as long as we're doing the Saturdays online, you know where I
Yep.
am. So, and maybe I will be doing that California Neil next week, because
Yeah.
I did spool that holo shimmer thread specifically for it. So, and I'm kind of keen to give it a try.
And
I
I've
have this
done,
beautiful. Michael wasn't here, but I have this like gorgeous green.
Oh, yeah.
All of these from this end on. This is all this holographic thread,
Yeah.
and because it's on these very long bobbins, you can't use them any other way. I just put them on the Norvise spools.
Yeah.
So I'm using that. That's one of the colors I was using today is sort of a holographic, I don't know, pinkish sort of color. So maybe I'll
I've
bring
got,
some of these babies for the fly swap.
Sure.
And
I've dug out my my old books, so I'm going to research another old fly or an older fly. I've been intrigued with a lot of these older patterns that people don't seem to use much anymore, but I think they're just as effective, provided that you can get the materials, of course.
Get Ray Bergman's book, and you get both old patterns and not so much demand for exotic materials.
These are the two I've been working my way through. It's
Oh, that one, yeah.
kind of price,
Yep.
and also his tying and fishing the nymph one.
Okay. I don't know that one. I know the other one, other book.
Yeah, so I might scrounge through those and find a couple.
Yeah, I think I have both those books. Yeah. There are a few good, but I guess you guys don't fish wet flies too much.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not sure why guys don't fish wets more. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't work in the potholes here or the lakes here. Certainly Lake Cowichan, I would think guys would fish them up there. Most of the time when the guys, there's not a lot of stream fishing in the south end of the island that's not related to the salmon runs. But I'm thinking I might look at some sea run cutthroat patterns as well.
Yeah, the season.
We're kind of out of season now. That's the season for cutthroat coming in and for salmon coming in has kind of just ended pretty much. There's still a few chum coming up in the gorge, or sorry, that's not the gorge, I should say, in Goldstream. But there are not very many now. They're not picking much up in the way of fish for the hatchery yet. They've got most of them that they're going to get. And it was a smaller chum run this year than it has been for quite a while, apparently.
But how long
it was a good chum run.
How long do the cutthroat linger after the after the salmon run? Because they're there also for the eggs and
for the eggs, yeah, and
stuff,
then
right?
and then eventually the fry. So depending on which runs, I think I would think another couple of weeks and they're going to be gone. I know in the peninsula down in Puget Sound, most of them are done cutthroat fishing for now. But their runs are earlier, right?
Okay.
But here, I'm more interested in trying to fish for them when they're hanging out in the gorge or off the beaches. That's
right.
That's why I learned how to spay cast.
They could be now too, right? I mean, in theory, if you figure out the right places,
yeah,
they're more or less year round because they don't seem to go too far.
Yeah, I might go in the next week or so and have a go at the gorge right underneath the Bay Bridge. It's close enough to the harbor that there might be a few still hanging around there, and give that a go. But when they're coming into the stream mouths to pick up the exiting fry and stuff, I'm not sure. I have to talk to some guys here to find out, because there's some spots where there's small streams that come in to up north towards Sydney. There's a couple of spots where streams come in where you can fish from the beach.
Yeah, and I think on the way to Port Renfrew, there must be there are
Yeah,
fish
yeah,
coming in there as well.
Yeah.
And I think there are some beaches there that maybe worth trying
yeah.
as
I know
well.
that, Oyster River and a few others, there's places there that I bet they show up there, but people just haven't fished for them. The guys get focused on salmon here, and when the salmon runs in over, everybody goes and ties flies or
Yeah, that's the
stops
feeling
fishing.
I'm getting, is that not that there isn't much trout fishing, but that the focus on salmon is so intense that
Well,
it's like, we're not, those are small fish, who cares, right? We want big brutes that
Yeah.
break rods.
the guys were up fishing the Cowichan. They're going up to, actually, some guys are going up tomorrow. But apparently that's not been too good right now because the water's high. Water level's been quite high in the Cowichan. So the guys that were up last week caught some browns and rainbows that are on egg patterns. And I think that's what the guys are going to be going up for this on Sunday, is to the guys from the Hague Brown are going up and have a little picnic and fish off of Scott's Falls and try and fish downstream of there with mostly, I think, egg patterns.
Yeah.
Because the salmon
later
runs
in the season there, of course, once it starts raining properly, you can't really fish there.
No, yeah, and we got a missive the other day from the guys up at Lake Cowichan that are saying, "Hey guys, let's get off the pot and raise that damn weir."
Yeah, well,
they've been getting pushback from property owners on the lake that don't like another foot of water in the reservoir. But you put another foot of water in the reservoir and manage this heavy rainfall in the fall and winter, and then you got enough water to keep the stream fishable during the latter part of the summer. And this year you couldn't, because the water temperatures just went through the roof.
Yeah, it wasn't just that, but I mean, you had summer kill there, which was awful.
Yeah, terrible. They had terrible summer kill this year.
Are the streams open all year round there?
This year they were closed for they just reopened in mid-November. It was closed for about a month and a half, 2 months, because of temperature. It was just too hot in the water.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, if they're closed, they seem to only be closed in the summer.
Yeah, when it's too hot.
When it's too
when
hot
the flow rates are too low.
and too dry. It's like, it's as bad as southern Alberta, if not worse, in the summer down there.
Yeah. Well, the Cowichan Valley, when they stop getting rain in midsummer, it can get pretty warm there. And because they have a minimum flow allocation for the pulp mill that's at Duncan, that reduces the amount of in-stream flow for fish.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why the push is on to raise the weir at Lake Cowichan another foot to 2 feet to provide enough storage of water to keep that stream cooler in the heat of the summer.
So Dave, how does it work then with the pulp mill? Do they get the water piped directly to the mill, or do they get it from the river downstream at Duncan?
I'm not sure how that works, Florin, because if it was an in-stream allocation for the pulp mill, you'd think it would keep this river cooler.
That's exactly what I'm asking.
So there must be some kind of diversion thing for the pulp mill that comes out of where the weir is.
Wow.
I don't know. It's a long way.
Yeah, well, exactly. It's what, 30, 40 kilometers?
Yeah. So I'm not familiar with how that works. I should try and find out.
Is there much water diverted for the farms in the valley there?
There's some, I'm sure there's some. I don't know that there's any place where there's like pump houses or anything that divert them off into the farms.
Yeah, I'm not aware myself, but I was just, I haven't been much on the
Yeah,
kind of on the south side of the valley
yeah,
where most of the farming is and the
Yes.
wineries
Yeah.
and all of that. And I mean, usually where there is farming, there is water consumption, and that water must come from somewhere.
yeah, yeah.
So it's kind of an
And
obvious.
of course, there's Lake Cowichan itself, the town. And then Duncan's got to get its fresh water from somewhere as well.
Yeah, it's all coming from the river then. Yeah.
Yeah, and those communities are growing, so their demands, I'm sure, on the fresh water is increasing as well.
Oh yeah, especially Duncan. Duncan's grown enormously.
Yeah, and
So
that's
Michael, Duncan, this is at the mouth of the Cowichan, where it flows into the strait.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's I know that friends of ours were recently visiting the island, and they've been sort of theoretically thinking about the possibility of moving there, and it was like, oh, we looked at some places in Duncan, it's pretty nice and whatever. So there's a lot of development there as well.
yeah, where the big development has been the last few years. It's been up around Parksville and Qualicum Beach. Although they're starting to develop a little further north too now, Campbell River and area for retirees.
Oh yeah, this is going to reach Port Hardy in no time.
Yeah.
And the congestion on the island highway, it's probably going to become something of a nightmare.
Well, it's bad enough now. If you're going around Nanaimo, the diverter road that they built to to divert people going north to Qualicum Beach and stuff from there, that's chock full of cars now. We drove up to Qualicum Beach. Our first road trip with the electric car. We went up to Qualicum Beach and back, and it was busy. That road highway that goes around Duncan was really busy, and of course goes all the way up to Port Renfrew, right?
Is Port Hardy?
Well, Renfrew and Hardy. Yeah.
It goes to Renfrew as well.
Yeah, that's the only way you can get there.
Port Renfrew?
Yeah.
No.
Oh no, not Renfrew.
To Souk,
Port Hardy.
and,
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. No, Port Renfrew. Okay.
It's on the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the kind of the end of the road going west.
Yeah, there is a connector
Northwest
from
from Victoria. Yeah.
There is a connector from Renfrew that goes up and over and comes down into the
Cowichan. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've done that. It's a beautiful, it's a scenic drive.
Yep.
It's quite lovely, and you drive by some nice streams there, and I always wondered,
Yeah.
there's got to be some cutthroat in those streams. I mean, unless they're, because the Cowichan area has got limestone from what I understand.
Mm.
So the geology of it should be better than other places. I mean, the reason the Cowichan is such a good stream is because the upstream watershed has got some limestone in it, from what I understand, and so is the Campbell.
Yeah.
Other areas have these really poor waters where there's no resident life because the geology is kind of
metamorphic.
It's a very different. It's a very different thing from what we're used to in Alberta, where the Front Range is nice limestone, and that's why the streams here are so
productive.
Are well, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
Here the
winter
is limiting the productivity big time.
Yeah, it's the same thing in New Zealand. There's volcanic soil that has a lot of nutrients in it in the North Island, and some of the best streams are basically filtering through pumice and picking up all sorts of nutrients, and you get these. There's one that I fished a bit that has, you get the watercress that's in there with the little channels through the watercress, the spring creeks. That's gorgeous fishing, but and that's because the water's coming up through volcanic soil. That's what feeds Rotorua and Lake Taupo and that whole area is
All of those.
volcanic
Mm,
soil.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Produces big fish.
Lots of food, lots of insects.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Anyway, I've got to get going
All right.
now. So
Take care,
take
guys.
care. I'll
I'll see you
hope I'll be
later.
on time next week.
okay. Perfect.
Bye.
Well, we'll see you next time.
Yep.
I
See you.
guess see you Wednesday night.